So before we begin, I want to welcome those of you who are joining us for the first time and to take a moment to share the mission of the Parkinson's Foundation. Every day and in everything we do, we are working to make life better for people with Parkinson's. To achieve our mission, we pursue three goals: improve care for everyone with Parkinson's disease, advance research toward a cure, and empower and educate our global Parkinson's community. The PD Health at Home programs are presented by the Light of Day Foundation. Their generosity has made today's program possible. So thank you so much, Light of Day Foundation, for your support. And we'd like to invite you to participate in our other PD Health at Home events, Wellness Wednesdays and Fitness Fridays. Join us this Wednesday for social engagement brain games, not just fun and games. Studies suggest there are also many cognitive benefits for people with Parkinson's who participate in puzzles, trivia, and brain teasers. Boost your wits and your mood by joining with peers for Scattergories. Scattergories is a creative thinking and category-based game where teams will be given an initial letter and name objects starting with that letter within a time limit. Up for the challenge? It's easy and fun, but not too easy. So if you're interested in playing brain games with us this Wednesday, please visit parkinson.org/PD Health, and Jennifer will drop that link in the chat for you guys to register. And next Monday, we will be exploring mantra. So mantra is a phrase that we'll repeat over and over again to help us relieve stress. So please join me next Monday for mantra for stress relief on our Mindfulness Monday session. And of course, always ending with the resources accessible to you, either online or by the phone or through email. We're here for you and are able to support you in any way that you might need through your journey with Parkinson's disease. So that's all I've got for you guys. And now I'll stop taking up so much of our time so we can get into the practice of the breath. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Rush here with us today. Dr. Rush, thank you so much for your guidance today.
Oh, thank you so much, Krista. And thank you everyone for being here with us today. It's so nice to see you all. And I'm very excited to be able to come back this month and talk a little bit about awareness of breath and how to use that to help with anxiety. And I think if there was ever a year that any of us had started to experience anxiety for the first time, this year has probably been the year, right? It's been quite the whirlwind. It's been a roller coaster of ups and downs and emotions heading every which way. And certainly the research is showing that anxiety is definitely more for everybody over this past year. And so it's often something that brings people into my office to come see me or doing virtual visits like online today. And often when we work on anxiety, I start people with many awareness of breath and breath meditations to try to help to get them to anchor a little bit better in managing some of their symptoms. And so, I want to do a little bit of background on why this is important so that we can have a full appreciation of the context of why we do these breath meditations. I think so often, when we get stressed or anxious, people around us might say, okay, just breathe. And we're like, if only it were that simple. But in reality, in some ways, it may be that simple. And, so I want to talk a little bit about that physiology as to why the breath is so important. So I think it's important to recognize, first off, that, from an evolutionary perspective, we have been selected to be anxious. That has kind of been bred into us over the generations. And it's because, back in the day when we were, fighting off lions and tigers and bears, our ancestors that weren't anxious about those predators and those creatures and survival in general tended not to make it. They are the ones who said, oh, that'll be okay, and didn't build fences and didn't build weapons and didn't think about ways to defend against such predators. They got eaten. And so from that perspective, anxiety has become a part of us, and it's not necessarily always a bad thing, right? It's good to have a stress response. And, over time, our body has built quite an exquisite response to stress that has been meant to help keep us alive. And so when our stress response goes off and everything starts to amp up, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens. There are certain hormones that tend to rise, like cortisol. There's certain neurotransmitters that tend to rise, like adrenaline and norepinephrine. We tend to notice that our muscles tense up, our heart starts to beat faster, our blood pressure tends to rise. Our blood actually flows differently, and it flows more in our core and less to our hands and feet, which is why sometimes those feel kind of cold and clammy when we're stressed. And so we have this wonderful stress response that helps us to either fight the foe that's in front of us or to be able to flee the situation. So that fight or flight response, that's driven by what's called our sympathetic nervous system. And then once the stress is over, we have another branch of our nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest response. And it's meant to help our body to come back down and all those things to even back out so that we can rest. And ideally, that's how it works. We have a stress, our stress response rises, it's over, it tends to fall, and then things go back to quote unquote normal. However, in modern day, we don't have stressors like we used to back when we were running and fighting lions and tigers and bears. Our stressors tend to be a bit more pervasive. And so, it might be that every day we get stressed out by rush hour traffic, or we're stressed out by our health, or we're stressed out by the things that we see on the news. And our body will still have that fight or flight, live or die kind of stress response, even though it may not necessarily be a threat to our survival. And it happens so often with some of the stressors that we have in our lives that sometimes that stress response never really recovers fully, and we continue to kind of live in that stress zone. And so we don't always have some of those responses to bring it back down naturally. So sometimes we need to do that by giving it a little bit of help. And one of the easiest, most accessible ways of doing that is being able to focus on something that's going on in the here and now, to show our bodies that it's okay to think about something else. And it helps our brain to refocus attention in a productive way by focusing on the breath. So depending on what statistic you read, we breathe anywhere from 17,000 up to 24,000 breaths a day. And that's a whole lot of breathing. And it's something that typically comes pretty automatically, because if we had to consciously think about breathing every time we needed to, we wouldn't really have a whole lot of brain space to do much else. And so to be able to breathe naturally without having to think about it is a gift. However, sometimes how we breathe isn't always necessarily doing us any favors. And so oftentimes when we get stressed, we tend to breathe very shallowly, or sometimes we don't even breathe. We might hold our breath when we're stressed. And that may come along with some of that muscle tension that develops when we're stressed. And so being able to anchor back into the sensation of the breath not only gives us a pause on the stress that we might be experiencing, but it also helps us to kind of re-regulate a little bit of how much oxygen we're able to get into our bodies to help nourish it and help us to kind of move forward with our best foot. So I thought that we could spend a little bit of time in an awareness of breath meditation today to be able to kind of experience this a little bit more. And usually with mindfulness, awareness of breath is one of the first meditations that we learn. And oftentimes any meditation that you do starts off with an anchoring to the breath. And so recognize that this can be something that you can do as a formal meditation all by itself. It can be something that you do as an intro to another meditation practice, as a way just to ground in the moment before you proceed. sometimes we can even do, an awareness of breath practice while we're moving. We don't have to be sitting down and sitting still to breathe, right? We breathe and take our lungs with us wherever we go. And so being able to sometimes be aware of the breath in the moment when we're at the grocery store or when we're driving with eyes open, or when we're around people that sometimes don't always, make us feel the best. If it might be a stressful encounter, being able to still rely on that anchor of the breath is a wonderful way to help get through stressful situations and manage anxiety as best we can. And I love, there's a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. For any of you who are familiar, he is a Buddhist monk who was a prolific writer on mindfulness. And he has actually written a lot about the importance of breathing and meditation. And one quote that I love is, "Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor." So the world may continue to whir around us, and our emotions may come and they may go, but our breath can be a stable anchor for us to be able to ground and be able to move forward with our lives as empowering as possible. So let's do a little bit of practice. So let's go ahead and get comfy in your chair, your sofa, or recliner, whatever you may be sitting or reclining in right now. And you can certainly practice with your eyes open or closed, but sometimes keeping them closed helps to eliminate some of the distraction that may be going on in your environment. And so if you keep your eyes open, just make sure it finds a soft, fixed gaze somewhere near the floor if possible. And just kind of get into your body a little bit. Notice any shifting of weight, kind of the general position of where your body may be and where your limbs may be in relation to other parts of your body. And remember that with this awareness of breath meditation, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to change anything about how you breathe. You don't have to change what it is that you feel like you should be doing. All you have to do is be. Just be you. Nothing less and nothing more. So as you get settled into your chair and prepare your brain for this practice, see if you can gently focus in on the sensation of your breath. Not trying to change the breath in any special way. Just notice the flow of your breath as it moves in and as it moves out. Just getting a general sense for the rhythm of your breath and what the cadence of that may look like. And as your attention becomes a bit more focused on the breath, notice where you feel the sensation of your breath the most. Some may notice the sensation of the breath in their nose. Some may notice it more in the back of their throat. Some may notice the breath more as it fills their lungs. But wherever you feel the breath the most, focus on that area specifically. Noticing what the sensation of the breath may feel like as you inhale Noticing the temperature, noticing the length of the breath. Noticing the breath as you exhale. The temperature might feel a little different as it comes out of your body. You may notice that the breath is a little softer or maybe a little bit more forceful on the exhale. Remember, neither is right or wrong. Just notice whatever is. And from that point of where you notice the breath the most, try to maybe broaden that focus and follow the breath as you inhale from your nose or mouth, whatever feels most comfortable. Following the breath as it goes down the throat, into the chest, into your lungs. Noticing the sensation of that inhale across your abdomen as your lungs stretch open a little bit. Noticing the muscles and the bones and all the tissue that tends to accommodate the breath. Noticing how that changes on the exhale. Remembering that this process is made to help us renew, to help us to refresh. And despite all the chaos that may be going on in the world, the breath is something that is constant. Something that we can rely upon as a source of grounding. And of course, as with any meditation practice, you will probably notice your mind wander to other sensations, other noises, other thoughts. And that just means that your brain is alive. You haven't done anything wrong by having a wandering mind. If you notice that it wanders, just try to gently redirect the thoughts, the attention back to the breath itself. And there is a good chance that you will have to do that many, many, many times over as part of this process, and that's okay. The coming back to the breath is what helps us to anchor, regardless of how many times it may wander. And see if you can notice that as you continue to focus on the breath, you may be able to relax into this rhythm of breathing a little bit more. As you anchor to the breath, some of your reactivity, some of your worry may come down a couple notches. Focusing on the breath helps you to drop to a place that's deeper than your personality, deeper than your identity. Can help us to transcend beyond the self. And it can help us to recognize those stressors and those anxieties in a better perspective, because they don't define us. Continue to anchor to that sensation of breath if it is comfortable for you. Maybe allowing the shoulders to drop a little bit. And giving yourself a gentle reminder that if at any point during the day things become a little overwhelming, a little stressful, you can always come back to this place focused on the breath. Allow this to be your anchor. And when you're ready, start wiggling those fingers and toes. Stretch out the shoulders a little bit. Feel your feet grounded on the floor if that's where they're located. Shift your sit bones a little bit in your chair. And when you're ready, bring yourself back to more active awareness of your surroundings and open your eyes. Right. So if anyone has any questions or thoughts that they would like to share in the chat, I am happy to field any of those before we end for today.
I just want to ask the group a question and see. I know for me, there was a point in this session that I changed almost. It was very challenging at first, and then at some point, it was, I'm here breathing. All I was thinking about was just breathing. And so I'm just curious if anyone else felt kind of that, I don't know, it was just like a shift in awareness, I suppose you'd say, which is difficult, I think, to drop into, but I was able to get there today. And I'm just curious if anyone else felt kind of that same shift at some point, or even, if you noticed that your breath changed when you came to it. And Dr. Rush, while we wait for responses, Marcy says you have such a soothing voice. Thank you. And Bert writes to us. He says, was very relaxing to the point where I nodded off several times. That's great, Bert. If you want to comment on that, Dr. Rush.
So definitely, sometimes we're so primed to always be doing that if we're not doing and we just try to be for a little bit, our body only knows being active or we're sleeping. And so if we just try to be and just be aware of what's going on and not necessarily trying to sleep, our body still is sometimes conditioned to want to sleep because it's like, oh, this is rest time. So let me shut off. So sometimes that can happen, especially at first when establishing a meditation practice. And then other times also, I think it's important that our body may be trying to tell us something. So if we're not getting enough sleep or our sleep is restless, and then when we kind of go into a being mode where we're not striving or trying to do anything, we end up falling asleep, then maybe that's telling us that we may need some more rest in the evenings. So sometimes that can come up as well, but not uncommon to sometimes feel so relaxed that you may want to nod off once or twice. Yeah, we're not going to fault you for that. So. And let's see here. I'm looking at a few other comments. I mean, it looks like a lot of people find it helpful to be able to stop doing and just be. Like they don't have to do anything. And this is the great thing about the awareness of breath meditation. There are many, many breath work exercises out there where, you inhale for 4, hold for 6, exhale for 7, and, or other variations on that. This is not that. This is totally just meant for you to be with your breath and whatever it may be doing. Sometimes if you're more anxious, you may notice that it's a bit quicker. And then as you pay attention to it, it actually slows down. But you don't have to make it slow down. It just does it by virtue of you anchoring to that process of the breath. And it's so kind of odd for us a lot of times at first to not try to do something that we feel like we're doing it wrong. And so that's why I say you're not doing anything wrong by just meeting your breath where you're at. That's all you have to do. And whether that's for, 10 seconds when you're on an elevator to, half an hour with a formal practice of this, it can be something you can utilize anytime, day or night.
I really appreciate you, Dr. Rush, alluding to we weren't trying to alter the breath. We weren't trying to come into a specific technique, but the practice was to be aware of your breath. And I think, more importantly than ever before now, is really recognizing how you are breathing and that just acknowledging that you are in fact breathing is a phenomenal autonomic response. It's really quite beautiful, the power of the breath. And so for anyone who might have been asking, I did put the quote that Dr. Rush cited for us in the chat somewhere. So feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. So it's there in the chat for you guys. If you want to look up some of his work, I actually reached out to Dr. Rush. We were talking about what we're going to be doing over the next few months. And she recommended a couple of books for me to read. And I am reading his Be Here Now textbook. I'm slowly going through it because, this type of work does take time and implementation into life. So you want to read these textbooks and take these practices slowly so you can integrate them into your daily life, like breathing and taking those moments to acknowledge the breath.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that is our time for the day. Oh my gosh, we're over a minute. Dr. Rush, would you like to say any final comments to our Mindful Parkinson's group today?
Just thank you so much for having me, guys. I look forward to seeing you again in June. And, just remember, you can always come back to the breath, no matter how lost you may feel. So please keep that in your heart until next time.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. And thank you all for joining us today. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.